Hey, would you like a new method for cutting dovetails like these? Well, not this big, but nice, crisp dovetails without a complicated jig? Well, I'm going to show you. Stick around. All right, welcome to the shop. It's good to have you stop by. We're coming off an epic weekend and we're glad to be with you tonight. We would like to hit the subject of table saw dovetails. I'm going to show you a special technique for cutting those types of dovetails with the assist of the table saw. Now, if you like this content, please consider subscribing. That'll help us out. Thank you very much. And also check out our website at epicwoodworking.com for all kinds of projects and plans and fun stuff. All right, so let's get to it. I want to show you how to cut dovetails on an interlocking board like this. We'll use this as an example. But we're going to, as I said, use the table saw. Now, let me get this massive model out here. This is a piece of pine that we did on a Shop Night Live not too long ago. And I'm going to make a little noise now. And we did that enlarged like this to specifically show the important things to think about when cutting dovetails. But we've got this component of the dovetail that's called the tail section. So it's described by these wide flangey things here that are shaped almost like dovetails. So that's why we get that name. And then it interlocks with the negative part, which are called the pins, because they come up through between the tails. This is a classic through dovetail where you see the dovetail from both vantage points. Now, the important thing when hand cutting dovetails like this is to make sure that you're 90 degrees to the surface to cut across. And that's what we demonstrated during that episode. If you want to check it out, did some amazing hand cut, didn't we?
We did.
Remember that? Remember when you did that? And we got some beautiful 90-degree cuts and it fit together great. And of course, white pine is a little more forgiving. That's part of the reason I like using it for demos. But I'm not going to use white pine tonight. I'm going to use cherry. A little harder, a little less margin of error. But I'm going to use the table saw. And the table saw will be used to make these cuts across, creating these tails. So let's say you are going to use a table saw to make these cuts. You can see how this could work, because if you could hold this vertically like this and against a sled and cross cut like this, you would get a nice clean 90-degree cut across that angle. And if you tipped it, the blade over, you'd get that angle, and you could make that cut and then that cut. And then keeping it just like that, you would just spin the piece around and you'd be able to make the other two cuts, because these are exactly the same angle. You'll just reference from the other side to create the other angle. Now, here's the thing. You're going to need that saw blade to go up there, and it would be really great if that saw blade would cut nice and cleanly up into this corner. And if you haven't noticed it now, you're probably noticing it now that I'm saying it, is when you crank that blade up, because you're at an angle, that blade's going to want to make an angled cut at the top, and it's going to cut into there. So we need a blade that is going to come up and have the angle at the top if we want to create a nice flat bottom there. So enter the new invention. I don't know how long this has been around, but I think I only started using them about, 5 years ago. And they are angled saw blades. So the teeth are ground at an angle. If you were to be able to zoom in on there, you may notice that all these teeth are high on the left side. They're all pointy up high left. And they all have the same angle of tooth grind. So if I tilt this blade to the angle of that tooth grind, I'll end up with a nice flat cut at the top of the cut with this angle. So these saw blades can be purchased with a varying assortment of teeth ground, but you only get one per blade. You can't change it. So this one is a 10-degree dovetail. So that angle is just 10 degrees off of 90. So I would always want to tilt this only 10 degrees, and then I could make my cut. So we've got these pieces. We want to make a cut. I want to have the camera lady just swing around and show you where we've used this before. Because I was thinking about this the other day, and I realized we had done this in a course. This shaker chest of drawers course some years ago. And I showed it in the course, but I've never shown you on Shop Night Live. These dovetails right here, let's put a little, this one's been around in the shop for a little while, so the cherry's getting a nice color. I'm just wiping some mineral spirits or paint thinner on here so you can see them pop. But look at that. All these dovetails were cut with the method that I'm about to show you, using the table saw. Here's the tails, those light colored flares, and then we have the dark pins coming up through. And these are almost exact same size as I'm about to show you how quickly and accurately you can cut them. All right, so we'll use the table saw to cut these spaces between the tails. All right, let's get back to the bench.
Tom, why did you choose 10 degrees?
I didn't actually. That's what that blade is. So let's talk about the degrees. Excellent question. When we've cut dovetails in the past, I've shown you these kind of dovetail jigs. But you can see this one says slope 1.5 and 1.8. So this side is a steeper slope, 1.5, and this side has the 1.8. Let me show you what that means is just if you come over 1 inch and then you come up the corner, this is a 90-degree corner, you come up like, let's say, a 1.5. So that just means go over 1 inch, come up 5, that's to here. And that angle, that line is 11 degrees. If I go 1.8, I come over 1, I go all the way up to 8. That angle is 7 degrees. So our 10 degree is just a little higher. It's probably close to a 1.6, right? Right about there. So it's a softer, less dramatic kind of dovetail. Now, I am actually going to use the same blade that I used to cut those feet. If you look at this last line here, see how steep that is? That's slightly under 1.4. That's a 14-degree angle, quite bold and pronounced. And that's very close to the John Townsend dovetails that were on that chest of drawers that we've mentioned some time ago. But this is also the angle that you'll see on the Fine Woodworking logo. It's very close to the 14 degree. So it's more dramatic, it's more noticeable, but those finer, softer angles are more for decorative or those really thin pins when you want to cut those thin pins. So we're going to go with the 114. So you can get those grinds. By the way, they're not a sponsor, but one of the best saw blades out there is Ridge Carbide. And we got a link to their site. They do have these blades. That's where I've got this one. This is a 10-degree dovetail, and I already have in the saw the 14. And they're both the same. They have the high point on the left, and I just have to tilt that one over 14 degrees to get it to work. But you can check out their saw blades there. I did call and speak with them today and found out that you can actually, if you have an extra blade, you can send it to them and they will grind it to the angle that you want. So There's one catch though. It has to be a flat tooth blade. So all the teeth at the end have to be 90 degrees now, okay? If you have pointed, like alternating points, they won't grind that, all right? So, but you can call them and ask them about it. It'll be cheaper if you had a blade that was a flat point all the way. But I've got a saw stop. I used to have a Powermatic. Those are both left tilting saw blades. You'll see it designated on the order form. They'll ask for the arbor bore. Most 10-inch saws are a 5/8 bore, right? And this is a 10-inch blade, 5/8 bore, and it's a left tilting. So you're gonna want, whatever direction it tilts, you want the point to be high on that side, okay? So yeah, you will designate that when you talk to them. All right, so let's get to work. Look, let's check this out. Here we are, we've got our piece. Let's just make like we'll join these two together in this way. We could say this is a face and this is the face. And we want to dovetail this corner together. So we're gonna mark out on this one, our location for our joinery. But before we do that, let's go ahead and use our marking gauge. I've already set the marking gauge so it's just slightly over the thickness of the material. I'm just right around 3/4 here. And I'm just going to go around this end. I'm going to use the marking gauge, make a nice clean cut.
Andrew says that Forrest makes a 14-inch as well. He says, have you tried a 7.25-inch circular saw blade for finer pins?
I have not. Now that I'm just going to use it with the table saw. So that saw stop, with all the controls on it and everything, it likes 10-inch blades. So I would do that, but you can look into that. Check out the site. I'm not sure what Forrest has on their site, but I know Ridge Carbide has some good information on there as well. You can check out both, whatever. All right, so let's lay these out. Okay, we're gonna do this down at the bench here. I'm gonna come in about 3/8 from each side. Let's see, which way should I do this? I'll come over 3/8 for my half pin. I'm gonna make these about a 1/2 inch. Let's just go right to the middle of this. All right, I made this 6. So here's the middle. I'm gonna mark out 1/2 inch on this one. And then let's come right between these two. Let's see, that would be it right about there. So I'm 2 7/8. Let's go 1 7/16. This would be the center of the other pin. You don't have to have them exactly spaced, but I want to lay these out equal because I'll show you how simple this can be. Now, I've already set this marking gauge to, bevel gauge to 14 degrees. So I'm going to just use my marks and lay these lines in here. Now these are going to be my guide, right? So I'll just set this here. Okay, now I could lay these, it's just a mirror on the other side, so I want to saw this out. That's what we're going to take away, all right? Now, the other side, you'll see in a second, I could mark them all the way, but I don't really have to because I'm going to make lines on the table saw sled and using these. And then when I flip around, I'll be able to just use those lines to locate them on this side. All right, that's one of the quick aids of this method. You don't get to do that with all the other methods. All right, do I have everything I need? I think so. Let's head over to the table saw. I've got a miniature sled here. You don't need to make every sled as I've shown you before, as big as your crosscut sled. This is my trusty panel crosscut sled, which is I like a lot. But we've got this mini sled. You can make them all different sizes. And this is ideal for if you wanted to run little dados or some kind of dovetails like this on the ends. So what I've done here, in order to move this along, I already tilted the blade over to my 14 degrees, and I raised the blade up and made some test cuts so that that blade would just split that knife line. All right, so that I raised the height, and so I'm getting a nice flat cut on that knife line. Now, I'm going to be able to make a cut up this side and then this side, but I can't clear the middle because I would trim off those nice points. So I'll have to clean out the middle by hand, but that's no problem, and I'll show you real soon. All right, so if you look here, the blade is angling to the left. If I bring it up, I could set my piece for the end cut right there, and I'm going to hit the line beautifully. So I can just make a little pencil line right here, okay? Now that's about a 1/16 away from the kerf cut. So I've got a nice zero clearance cut there. Then I'm going to slide over to make this cut. If I put that pencil line right on the line, now I can make a line over here, okay? So I'm just going to register the end of this to make that cut, and you guessed it. We slide over, we hit this one. Okay? So, let's see, do I need that other one? I could do that one too, but I'll show you how you don't have to. I probably should have drawn them all out. I could have made another line right there, and that would have completed the picture. Actually, I can do it just by doing this. So I know these are equal, so let's just make another pencil line over here. We're on the lines right there and there. So there we have it, I believe. Is that correct?
We're trusting
Trying
you.
to figure it out on the fly. That should be pretty close. All right. So now I'm ready to make my cuts. All right. So I'm going to just cross cut each one of these. Now, after I make that cross cut, I'm going to flip it around, and I can see right down here, if you look really close, you see where I come down with my other side, it's almost right on the line, but I made a second line in here. See that little pencil line? There's one very close to the saw cut. Mm-hmm. That's the one I'm going to use to make my secondary cut on all those. When I flip it around, I'll set the cut edge right on that inside line, and that will give me about a 1/2 inch wide. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to be exactly the same. And that's what I kind of like about this method, is they look very authentic. They look absolutely true. The beauty is that this crosscut sled is dead 90, so when I make this crosscut, I'm getting those tails are beautifully 90, and they're cleaned out nicely into the corners. So very quickly, you'll be on to cutting your pins. Now the end cuts, the other nice thing about this is because of the flat angle at the top of the saw blade, I'm just going to make like 3 passes. When I hit the end, I'll make that cut, and then I'll slide it over, make another cut, and another cut until I've cleaned right across the top. So I'll be able to completely clean both ends from this vertical position. All right, enough talk. Let's start cutting.
Let's watch.
So you can see how clean it is, how flat it is at the bottom, and it's just cutting into my knife line. And the ends are all cleaned up, nice and flat. So let's head back to the bench. All right, now it's just our usual cutting dovetails. So in order to get that notch out of the middle, I think I'll take that out with the coping saw first. I'll cut it a little closer. So I'm just going to use the coping saw and nip these a little closer. Oops. Oops.
Not coping very well there.
No, I'm not. I'm not coping too well. No, you're right. Good one.
Good one.
All right, so
Only been about 10 months.
you made sure I didn't say it right. All right, so I'm gonna get the. Let's see. We need half. We need. Let's just bring over all these chisels. Check this out. I got some new chisels. Thank you, Ed. You guys are too good to me. Some of you know who you are, but I thank you so much for these kind gifts. It means a lot, but these,
Just the handles are stunning.
oh my gosh, these are the blue spruce.
We saw them making these when we were at the woodpecker factory last year.
Polishing these
So
backs
incredible.
to like just a mirror, so you don't have to touch them. I mean, when you get them, they're perfect condition. I almost didn't want to use them, but they're tough. I mean, it's got that infused handle, so they're really tough, and they're a little smaller than my old Veritas. They weren't really old, but I don't want to make sure I get this beautiful edge right in that knife line. And, well, I forgot to do that. Hold fast doesn't hold fast unless you hit it.
Tim's asking about the coping saw. Was that a new concept one?
Oh yeah, but thank you again. That was also a gift.
Do you like it better than others?
I do like it. It's got a little finer tooth blade on it. What I like about it, you'll see in a little bit, is that it's deeper, so it has a bigger reach than my old one.
I'm going to move to your other side.
What's that?
I'm going to move to your other side.
Okay, so I'm just... I'm going to just cut in. I'm using the knife line to just trim. That's that little bump that I couldn't get out of the middle there. Sometimes when you're doing wider pieces, you can go all the way. You know, if I had a wider space in here. But I'm just registering right in this knife line. This one's a little narrow. I think I'm going to go to the... Let's just take this down a little bit. Then I'll...
The question actually was, do you think the new concept is valuable as it is expensive?
Well...
Compared to other less expensive ones? Maybe you don't know because you don't have a lot of them.
I do have my old one, and I actually liked my old one. I don't think you have to have one like that, absolutely. I mean, it's nice, it's lightweight, it's beautiful. I appreciate it. It was a wonderful gift. But I think, you know, if you're going to spend extra money on tools, I would put it into chisels before I would put it into something like that, because that type of saw is so, like a coping saw is so determined by the quality of the saw blade. You know, the handle and everything is nice, but you can put any saw blade on even an average coping saw and get the same results, you know. So it's just, I mean, it is very light. It's beautiful. It's got that deeper cutting capacity, so I do like that. All right, so all I did there was clean the floor so it was in plane with everything. Now we're ready to transfer the shapes and make our marks for the other side. So I'm just going to put these over here, and I'm going to set this here. Oops. So if we remember, now we're going to dovetail these right into there. So I'll bring this down, and I'm going to use my little spacer gauge here. And I want to just set this to the height right here so that we get another piece of material. So I'm locking in there. Now I'll bring this over, and here's my position. So having it off the table like that keeps it from sliding around. I'm going to bring in my square, and I like to just put the blade against the face of the workpiece and raise up this flat here, and that helps me index flush on that side. And I gotta just see what I'm doing here. So I'm looking to see that I'm nice and flush. I should feel just slightly proud at the end, which I do. And let's see, that feels good. So now I'm ready to knife. So I'm flush, I'm even, just slightly proud, nice and square, and I'm going to grab my marking knife, and I'm going to hold the flat back of my marking knife against this tail. Flip, and then we hit this side. So this smart method, as you can see, it cuts almost half the joint, you know, but it gets you lined up for success because all these cuts are beautifully 90 degrees from the table saw. So, but it does require some hand cutting. So it's kind of like a hybrid. It gives you a good experience here. These are the first ones. So now I'll take this away, and I want to scribble on what I'm removing before I get confused. So when I saw these, I'm going to let the saw just touch the knife line, almost like split it, right? On the waste side, on the scribble side, all right? So let's... all we got to do is finish marking this. I want to get myself some guidelines here, square and plumb. So I want to just make sure that these knife lines are around the corner a little bit. And I'll use those to index my pencil to make those lines square down. So this is a good method. You know, you can try this out. If you get one of those blades, you know, you choose whichever angle you like. Whoops.
Evan's asking if you've ever tried to cut the pins on the table saw.
No, Evan, I haven't, but you could. I know that people have set up jigs and use spacers and things, you know, definitely can do it. Yeah, because you would just, your your sled would have to just be tilted at 14 degrees. And you'd be making these cuts, which we can talk about after I get this cut. It'll be easier to show it. So, yeah, that's a nice little engineering test. But I'm just going to set my little 0.5 millimeter into that knife line, and then I can give myself a guideline, okay? So this is just so that when I'm sawing, I can see that I'm sawing plumb and true, because these pins have to be, you know, plumb 90 degrees to this surface so that they fit well with what we just cut on the table saw. This is just to help us here.
He says, oh, Tom doesn't have a jig for the pin.
No, I haven't gone that far. I like to do a little bit by hand. I mean, you're getting close to setting up a dovetail jig there. I like hand cutting dovetails, as you probably guessed by now. I rarely even do this, you know, but this is great. You know, when I'm cutting dovetails for the top of a case in the bottom, this is a great method, because when you have, like, you know, 8 or 9 dovetails going across a wide panel, it can get challenging to fit them well. So, all right, so now here I am. I'm going to now put it back in, and it's a good idea to when you clamp it in here, get it plumb, so that just helps as well in getting an accurate true cut. So there we are. We're looking good. I'm going to turn on this light again and have some fun sawing. All right, so this is dovetail saw, and I'm going to do as I just said, set it on the waist side and touch that knife line. I'm on the wrong side for you.
That's okay.
You'll see it in a second.
So there's some comments here about, since Mike Pekovich was here this weekend,
Yeah,
and his blue tape approach,
yeah.
and how helpful that is.
How what?
How helpful that is.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I would definitely, I think that's a great way to go. I mean, I learned this way. I just find that that knife line, to me, that's as sharp and clean as the edge of the tape. But the tape is such a great visual too, because it shows you exactly what you're cutting away. And Mike actually demonstrated some of that. It shows you, it confirms that you're in the right place too, because you actually, when you cut away the tape, you could put your piece back on there and it'll kind of lock into the tape, because the tape has a dimension. It's like you've cut a little dovetail to start with. So that was interesting. I never realized that. But once you get going, you can try it without. I mean, it saves you a step. You're just going to mark it out. You don't have to pick away at the tape and stuff like that. But I like the knife line too, because if I do miss it, yeah, you can come back. I guess with the blue tape, it's the same thing. But I come back and I just set my chisel right into the knife line and clean it. But here, boy, I've got a lot of shadow from that camera light. That's all right. Here we go.
It's interesting how techniques or routines that you have stick with you, and they're the way that you did it, and you'll always want to do it.
Right, so now I'm going to come over the other side, and I'm going to be on the waist side, and see how crisp that knife line is? That gives me a beautiful target to set the left side of this curve. All right, so I'm just going to pull this back right next to that knife line. You could think of it as blue tape. Again.
Yeah, Keith is asking about your marking knife. It's an older marking knife, right? From long ago. So we don't have one.
No, we do have a link for it.
Okay.
Yeah, with that link, I'm sorry, I should have, yeah. It's probably in that other Dovetail video too, right?
We'll put all that in there right after we're done.
Yeah, that's a nice one. Although I did grind that specially. I'll show you in a minute. Can you back the camera up a little? Sure. It's like literally between my head. You guys have no idea. Sometimes I could not. The last one I was looking through the wires on the camera, but hopefully it came out all right. And the last one. So here I'm going to just draw it back. See how I'm just right on the side of that knife line. I found that if I just touch into that and saw true and plumb, I'm good, right? All right, so now let's use the scope saw. This has a little finer tooth than my old one. Since you're asking, I don't think I can pull it out that fast. Let me see. No, it's in the lower drawer. I'm not going to go after that right now. But watch how this has such a nice tooth on it. Wow, it's really cuts beautifully. But I'm pretty sure you could get that same tooth quality blade. And I think they're pretty universal. This could go in a lesser quality frame, and you would get very similar results. And but see how much this is deeper than my other one. So my other one, I wouldn't be able to probably go all the way across here. I'd have to turn it around. It is nice and light though. One more. That was a little wavy on that one. All right, so if we check it out, so far, we've got our saw cuts, and I'll just come in after. I can just about see my pencil lines. I'll touch this up after, but now I'm gonna lay this flat, and I get to sit down again. So, I'll get my mallet.
Turn off that light.
What's that? Just light? Yeah, I don't need that anymore. Okay, here we are. So, let's set this up. And I'm going to use the 1 inch. And I'm just going to take a little. And this is scary. I don't want to cut my new bench.
David was mentioning that earlier.
Yes, it's a real thing. But I do like it. Oh man. Okay, so I gotta make sure I'm in there, and now I'm gonna go 90 degrees to that surface. Just take a little and then set it.
I'm coming up.
So I'm taking a little material away because I was a little heavy there. Now I've got a little less than a 1/16. I can set my edge and hold it 90 or slightly under. I do like the feel of these. I prefer it, these chisels to the other, because they're a little smaller. In this condition, they feel really well balanced, super comfortable in your hand, and they're quite sharp, obviously. I forget the steel. I know that it's like cryogenically hardened and all that, but
Andrew says that Phil Lowe used to say, just get the ding in the new workbench and move on.
I do have a little ding over here. Yeah. Right there. Just kidding. No, I know. That was the old, I remember reading the story. I think it was in a Reader's Digest. That dates me. About a farmer, you know, and he got a new helping hand, a young kid, and he had his brand new white overalls, and he was being so careful, and the farmer just dropped a post right in the mud and splattered it all over. So he'd get to work. Same idea. Sort of like my overalls here. Wow, I got a big chunk here. I'm just going to take a little off. This method, sometimes it pulls the fibers.
Are these the blue spruce bench or dovetail chisels?
These are the bench, as far as I know. But they're beautiful, the dovetails, because they got the edges. I looked at them on the site, but I think I'm almost certain they're the bench. I think the dovetail was slightly smaller size, I forget. Oh, it's weird. So, here we are. I just knocked the light out. Can you?
I'll get it. You don't worry about it. I'll
it?
take care of it. You keep going. Keep on.
I think we need the light. I can't see. Oh, it's counting on that light. I can set one up. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so I've cut in with from both sides. Now I just have to come in and clean this up. Okay, so I just want to make sure I clean up into the root here. Again, these are super comfortable, but look how I'm pinching. I'm holding it short, not like this. That would make a very nice clean incision. So I want to just clean these down to the base here. I've got to make sure that all the material is out of the way to create that nice inside 90-degree corner all around, right? So now I come in this way. Just going to get that material in on the corner. This is where that method of the table saw method, the way it cleans so beautifully up into the corners of that 14-degree cut on the tails. That takes some time. You have to get in here like this. Usually when you cut them by hand, you have to come in and fuss with them a little bit, you know, to clean them up crisply, because your saw doesn't make a 14-degree inside cut.
Tony's curious if there's any way to avoid the tear out in the middle of the baseline.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the other method where you don't saw away all the waste, but this one is unusually strong. Usually I don't get that much with cherry. I wonder if it's the angle. anything on the chisel. But I mean, you see it more commonly on softer woods like poplar and pine. But it's like the fibers get pulled out because they're not supported on the other side. So if I didn't cut away with the coping saw first and I left kind of a bridge, but then it's a harder kind of chop through. So ideally, I would cope it maybe a little closer, and then it wouldn't be so hard of a fiber pull, you know, as you chop down. But you could experiment with that.
So you were
and report back.
at the beginning that the shaker chest of drawers, is this how you did the dovetails for all of those? Or did you?
Yeah, in the course actually, I showed, I did show that technique. I'm trying to remember how many techniques we showed there. I know in the blanket chest course, I think I showed 3 different techniques. I showed this technique, an actual Lee dovetail jig, and then a total hand cut approach, you know, cutting both sides of the joint by hand. So, you know, there's lots of ways to go, but this is a nice method. So if you want to have it in your bag of tricks, I hope this helps. All right, so once I've got everything crisp in there, I'm ready to try. I don't see any knife lines on the top. I think I touched them all. Everything here looks pretty true. I feel pretty good about how this is clean. I just see a little bit.
So is the tear out, Tom, a function of the wood or the...
Well, it's when I'm chopping
Sharpness
down,
of the
you see the
chisels.
bevel angle. It's cutting across, but at the same time, it's pulling out the fibers when they're not supported from the other side. It doesn't happen on the first cut. You know, my first plunge, it was when I was coming in from the other side because it's not supported on that other side. There's nothing against the table anymore. So if you could leave it and do the initial chop maybe, and then come in and cope and then finish, that might help too. All right, so it never bothered me though, because it's not really structural. You just don't want it out on the surface.
Have you ever tried a dado clean out bit to trim the baseline?
Oh yeah, I have done that with a router. You know what, the setup of it, the noise of it, the risk of the slip, yeah, I've tried probably every method, you know.
Yeah, and there was a question earlier I forgot to ask you what you think. Is this table saw faster than a router bit option?
I like it because of the hand cut. It looks better. You can make it whatever size. There's such a uniformity to the Lee dovetail. Those look the most authentic. But I'm talking too much. Let's try to fit this. You're probably eager to see if it fits. I am too. So I'm going to set that up there, bring it in. I'll push in with the pin. So hopefully everything lines up. Nice. Beautiful. I went in like butter. I didn't even have to wallop on it with the mallet, but that gives a little room for glue. Let's put a little thinner on it. See how it looks. Looks a lot like
It's nice.
wow, nice color, huh?
Very nice.
So there you go, the table saw method. See, I like this method for its natural, like, hand cut look, you know? Technically on the table saw, you almost don't have to make the knife lines when you're cutting there, but it helps when you're chopping between the pins. It sure does look more realistic. But then, of course, once this got glued up, you'd have to clean off those pins. You'd probably skim across the face, which lightens up the knife line a little bit as well. And that needs to be just pressed in, glued up.
That's great.
All right, so there you have it, the table saw method of cutting through dovetails. Well, again, if you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much. And check out our website at epicwoodworking.com for lots of courses and the neighborhood, where you'd learn about events like next weekend. We've got this bunch of people coming for the Epic Weekend. We can't wait. So we're looking forward to that. But we're just glad that you took time out of your day to hang out with us a little bit.
Yes, we are.
So thanks for stopping by. On behalf of the camera lady and myself, we look forward to seeing you next time, right back here on Shop Night Live. Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. So fun to be with you. Have a good week.